If you're only getting your employer matching your 401k, is that enough?
Brian, I am so excited about this because we get asked this question all the time. Hey, I'm maxing out my employer match. I'm doing that part. Is that enough for me to build wealth? And so we're going to dive into the answer to that question today. And we're going to walk you through how you can know if it is or if it isn't. But first, we have something super special for you guys. Brian, you want to tell them about it?
Yeah, this is something we worked on, and I got to tell you, the creative guys, Micah, we were super happy with this when it came through. I got to preview it for the first time in its complete form this morning, and it took my breath away. And I was so happy. My daughter was here home for the summer, and she's an animator herself, and this was pretty spectacular. So I can't wait for you guys to see. This is the trailer for Millionaire Mission that will be released on our social media platforms. I believe it's out there. It'll be on Amazon. Reby, anything else I'm missing?
Nope. No, I'm just excited to show it to people. Honestly, I was like, no, you said it all. Now. It's going to be awesome.
When I was in the 7th grade, my dad lost his job. It felt like our world had turned upside down. But looking back, it was the beginning of my real education in money. I learned the value of $1 early on, using coupons, working odd jobs. It wasn't just about saving money, it was about making the most of every dollar. My high school teacher once said, save just $100 a month and you're on your way to becoming a millionaire. That advice changed everything. But then, I lost my dad, and it was a wake-up call. I was chasing success and missing out on what truly mattered. I realized I didn't just want to make money. I wanted to make time. I decided to take control of my life and my finances. It wasn't about working harder, but smarter to ensure I had time for those I loved. Imagine what could happen if your $1 started working as hard as you do. Because building wealth isn't just for the rich, it's for anyone who dreams of a life filled with meaningful moments.
How about that? How about that?
Isn't it
Money
so
guy,
cool?
Brian Preston.
I mean, who would have thought? I mean, you start this whole book writing process and you end up with animations, book trailers. I'm just along for the ride. It's so cool. It's pretty incredible. It's kind of surreal in a lot of ways.
Hey, can I tell you what I think is wonderful, Brian? I did not recognize. I've been hanging out with you for decades now at this point. I did not realize what a smooth, calming voice you have.
Uh-oh.
Hearing you do that voiceover, that was great. Like, that was nice. And if you want a special treat, this week only, we're going to release out wherever you get your podcasts, a little preview of the audiobook. So if you're curious about, hey, what's it going to be like for Brian to read me this book, that's coming out this Friday, right, team? So wherever you get your podcast, we're going to release a sampling of that so that you can experience, so you can see what that's like. And I think it's going to be pretty stinking awesome.
So if you're new to this, because I mean, we jumped right in, my book, Millionaire Mission, does release a week from now, which is awesome. It's also completely terrifying in some ways, but I'd encourage you, look, we still have a lot of cool stuff that we're giving away. If you go to moneyguy.com/millionaire mission, you'll see all the different places that are selling pre-orders of the book. And what I was surprised by is I was clicking through them the other night just to make sure all the links, because that's how paranoid I am right now. There is huge price differences between them all. So be a true financial mutant. You might be shocked to find out that they're not all charging the same price. So, and I even saw one of them, I can't even remember who it was. They were even offering big discounts if you bought two. And I was like, hallelujah, that's a great thing. Buy three, buy four. But it's been a fun journey. It's been pretty exciting.
It's so exciting. All right, but that's one of the things that you guys showed up for. The other thing you guys showed up for is this question that we get asked all the time, Brian. And the question goes something like this. Hey, I am doing my 401k and I'm getting all of the employer match. That's pretty good, right? Like, is that enough? Is that enough for me to be able to retire? And Brian, when someone asks you that question, what's the answer What's the good financial advisor answer that you give them?
Well, I think no, but I will tell you, you got to hang with us on the financial order of operations, but also what we're going to show you in some of this case study is because it does. I'll just go ahead and ruin this part of it. If you're in your 20s and you don't get motivated by what we're about to show you, you have lost it, because it's pretty exciting to just show how just a little bit of today can really turn into a lot for the future and your great big beautiful tomorrow. But I do think this is also going to show when we get into other ages, 30s, 40s, and beyond, is that it is going to require you, yes, your money is powerful, compounding growth and your wealth multiplier, super powerful, but it's going to require more than your employer match.
So rather than just talking about theory and the idea of this, we wanted to put some actual numbers with this and kind of give you a very, very simple, a very elementary case study to show you why it may or may not be enough. It's not, by the way. Here are the assumptions that we laid out in our case study. We said, okay, what if you participate in a 401k, in an employer-sponsored retirement plan, and you get a 4% dollar for dollar match? So you put in $1, your employer will put in $1 up to 4%. So if you put in 4%, everybody say it with me, total amount that goes in is 8%. That's right. We also assumed, again, because we want to have as few variables in this illustration as possible so you can see how powerful this concept is, we went with a 6% rate of return. Very, very conservative rate of return assumption. And then we said, hey, let's assume, so that we can compare apples to apples, that every one of these people we're looking at has just a flat salary for their entire working career. The median U.S. household salary right now is just under $75,000. So we said, for illustrative purposes, let's assume that at the beginning of your savings, you make $75,000, and at the end of your career, you make $75,000, so that we can keep all of the variables as close together as possible. And we said, what happens at different ages if someone follows this advice?
And when we were talking about this, putting together the case study, I liked putting that very conservative assumption of 6% in there, because it does mute the impact of inflation, both on the wages or the salary, as well as just on the impact of that rate of return. So because we think that potentially there's more opportunity, but we want to be conservative, so you guys, because when we're making decisions of how much I can save to use for the future, we wanted to be conservative with those assumptions.
So let's look at the numbers. Let's start at the very beginning. Let's say that someone is 25 years old, and this 25-year-old is going to do this. Just do 4%, get the 4% match, and they're going to do that for an entire working career. Well, what you see is after 40 years of participating, you, the 25-year-old, have put in about $119,000. And yet, if your portfolio has earned 6%, a conservative rate of return, you have almost $1 million in your portfolio by the time that you get to retirement.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. I mean, you think about that. The compounding growth is it is the eighth wonder of the world. When you think about that, everybody thinks about, man, I just don't know if I can save a lot of money. I'm so busy, life is pulling at me, and I don't make a ton of money yet. And all this inflation, this shows right here, just doing 4% can go a long way. And the rest of the answer, and this is what I like, is that if you take it as, remember, we're using pretty static numbers, but as a percentage of your pre-retirement income, it's 53% just off of doing 4%.
Yeah, if you apply a 4% withdrawal rate to that portfolio, it would generate a little under $40,000 a year. Not too bad. So when you think about that 53%, you combine that with Social Security income that you're likely going to have coming in, there's a really good chance that retirement's going to feel okay. Maybe not like balling out of control, but this shows how valuable time can be. If you can start early and give yourself enough time, your money can do pretty incredible things.
So if you're in your 20s watching this, use this case study to show you, I don't care if it's $50 a month. Just do something, because yes, you might look at your coworkers, maybe your 40-something-year-old coworker, you look at them and go, man, they have so much more than me. I'm jealous that I didn't get in when they did. You have time, which is so much more powerful than what they have. It's an amplifier that just a little bit can go a tremendously long way towards the future. So don't let this decade pass you by.
I love it when you say just a little bit can go a long way, because we said, okay, what if we want to take this a step further? What if I want to save just 1% more? How impactful can a 1% adjustment in my savings rate be? And so there's this great illustration. You can go check this out on all of our socials if you really want to dive into it. But we said at all the ages in the 20s, if I can save an additional 1%, what does that mean for my future retired self? And I'll use a 20-year-old as an example. If I can start at 20, saving 1% more of my salary, that will replace an additional 9.2% of my pre-retirement income in perpetuity, assuming a safe withdrawal rate. So you can see that if I can trade just a little bit of today, it results in a lot of a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing thing. That is a case, or really case closed, on what deferred gratification and just putting a little bit of discipline, living on less than you make, can go a long way.
All right, Brian, so now let's go a little bit further in the future. What if you're someone who's 35 years old and you're just now finding the Money Guy show, you're just now taking investing seriously, and you have this question, okay, if I just do the employer match, is that enough? If I can put in 4% and my employer puts in 4%, is that going to be enough? Well, you can see that over that 30-year timeline, you will have saved about $89,000. Your portfolio is still grown, but instead of being almost $1 million now, because you've had less time, your portfolio is just a hair under $500,000.
Yeah, I think this highlights the fact that, yes, time does, the losing that 10 years for compounding growth does have an impact. Still pretty powerful that you had a big multiplier on what you saved, but it does mean probably more is going to be required than the baseline 4% plus the 4% match from your employer. It's just not going to get the job completely done.
Yeah, if you get to retirement and what you have is a $500,000 portfolio and you apply a 4% withdrawal rate to that, that's going to generate for you conservatively about $20,000 of income, which would be 27% of your pre-retirement income. Well, if you take that $20,000 and you add Social Security to it, you're probably going to be relatively tight. You're probably not going to be able to experience the same lifestyle in retirement that you had during your working years. So I would argue for someone in your 30s, this is also case closed. This certainly would suggest that only getting the employer match is not enough.
Yeah, you need to get a little more disciplined, determined, and let your army of dollar bills work for you, because you really are trying to let your money start working for you instead of you working all the time just to repay your wages. You need to have your army work stronger than your back, your brain, and your hands. The only way you can do that is just taking that little bit today.
But the great news is that people in their 30s, even though it doesn't look as good as the 20s, your money is still valuable. Because we said again, okay, what if we want to save an additional 1%? How powerful can saving 1 extra percent, even in my 30s, be? And this is what we found, that for a 30-year-old, every 1% additional you can save can replace up to 4.7% of your pre-retirement income in retirement. But by the time you get to the end of your 30s, by the time you get to age 39, it's still powerful. 1% saved can replace about 2.5% of your pre-retirement income. But you can see the earlier you figure this out, the earlier you take it seriously, the more valuable it's going to be for you. All right, Brian, now let's talk about the 40s. Okay, we get into the 40s. Someone at 45 says, okay, hey, I just figured this out. Maybe I made some bad decisions previously in life, and I'm kind of starting at ground zero, and I've got this job where my employer will give me 4% and I can put in 4%. Is that going to be enough?
It's not going to be enough, and we're going to show you in the illustration, but I don't want people to get turned off thinking that the opportunities missed them. Yes. Time is the most powerful of the 3 ingredients of wealth building. However, you still can be disciplined. You can think about what you want your future to look like, and you still have the opportunity for the compounding growth of your money. And that's why still go to moneyguy.com/resources and play around with our wealth multiplier, and you can start seeing how there's still lots of opportunity, but it is going to require a good bit more than just the 4% match from your employer.
Yeah, for the 45-year-old, if you did that between 45 and 65, you would have saved just a hair under $60,000, and your portfolio, assuming a 6% rate of return, would be worth about $230,000. Well, if we apply a 4% withdrawal rate to that, your retirement income from your portfolio is about $9,100. That's only 12% of your pre-retirement income. Even if you try to add in Social Security on top of that, it's probably not going to create the standard of living that you want. So what this realistically means for folks in their 40s is one of two things. You either have to get much more aggressive about saving. You got to really get that savings rate up, or you got to be more realistic about your retirement timeline. You might need to say, hey, I need to work a few more years. Hey, I might not be retiring at 65, maybe it's 70. You need to recalibrate. How do I get this ship back on the right track?
Yeah, and we can even show you what each year of that decade of your 40s, saving an additional 1% gets you. But I think the big takeaway from this, Bo, is that when you look at what 25% can do for you.
It's huge.
And go to moneyguy.com/resources. This is why when people ask me, hey, Brian, why do you guys say 25%? That seems like such a big ask. Now, let me mitigate this a little bit, because a lot of times I have to always clarify for people, if your household income is less than $200,000, you get to count that employer match in the calculation. So when I say make 25% work for you, and you're looking at that going, how does that work with paying bills? If you have a generous employer like this that's giving you 4%, 6%, it is directly impacting that 25%. But you can make this happen. But you have a balance there with life, is that if you start young enough, your money can do more of the heavy lift for you, and because the time is going to be compounding on top of itself and working for you. If you wait, it doesn't mean that the opportunities missed you. It just means more of the responsibility is going to fall on your savings and investment rate.
I love it. Brian, we love that we can answer questions like this. We love that we can put illustrations together to hopefully drive these concepts home. And our ultimate hope is that when we do this, it allows you to do money better. And one of the ways that we want to help you do money better is by answering your questions. So right now, we've got the team out in the wings collecting your questions, and we want to load you up. So if you have a question you want us to weigh in on, make sure you get it in the chat right now. And with that, Producer Reby, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Absolutely. We've got the questions coming in, so I'm going to kick it off with Calvin's question. It says, when would be a good time to tell kids about their UTMA? By the time he's 21, it'll be about $250K. How should we start this discussion early and train him thinking about it in the right way?
Was that $250K?
That's what he says. Yeah.
Shoot. I hope what that means is that mom and dad's portfolio is real big.
That's a good point.
Big, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the things we always tell folks, parents, is make sure you prioritize your own financial foundation before you start making your kids super wealthy. And I'd argue an UTMA that's going to be worth $250,000 at 21 is pretty powerful.
So I actually have some experience on this. I have a daughter who's over the age of majority in the state of Tennessee, because that is the problem with UGMAs, is that whatever the age of majority in your state is, your children actually will own that account. Now,
look, at that age,
you still have some strings of life, assuming that you tell your kids, hey, you like this? Behave and don't be responsible with this. This is not your start a Ferrari fund. That is a risk, especially somebody who's going to have $250,000 saved up. I hope for somebody who is saving this much, Calvin, that you're actually creating some life experiences along the way, where when I would encourage, get your kids to work in high school. I love the discovering that people actually enjoy work. Work can be satisfying despite what we're told out there in society. I think learning to what you can do with work, and then once your kids start earning money, prime the pump of saving and investing and also giving. There's nothing wrong. Bo does a great job of modeling that with his kids, with the give, save, spend.
I like that's the one you forgot.
That's the one I forgot. I couldn't think of. So what? That's 4 hours of sleep. Spend. That's right. We spend some of our money, but it is one of those things where. But once you get to, I know with my oldest, because realize she started working when she was 15. We opened up her custodial Roth IRA that year, and I'm going to tell you a side effect that you don't realize when you set up those online accounts with like Fidelity. If they have their UGMA accounts there with their Social Security number, when you set up that online custodial Roth IRA and they download the Fidelity app, guess what's going to be front and center when they go and they log into their Fidelity app is you're going to see not only that custodial Roth you set up for them, but because it's tied to their Social Security number, they're going to see that UGMA account that you also set up. So that's why it's important to also get the behavior of teaching, how scarcity and how the resource of money works, so your children can be good with money, not just have money. Because that's the problem when you look at lottery winners, professional athletes, and others. You go, how do these people that come into these large sums of money that should be more than enough for the rest of their life, why does it always fail? And it's mindset, and it's the training of how to actually use money as a tool, not the center of the universe, but the tool that it is. And a lot of times I think that's skipped with unfortunately, people when they come into money.
Yeah, it's interesting. The question, Calvin, is when do I tell my kid about the in my opinion, I don't think that's the first conversation that you have. I had a call with an individual this past week, and this family has done very, very well, and they have a daughter who is 17 years old, and we were talking about like, hey, okay, we're doing our estate planning, and we're thinking about that, and we want to begin to bring her into the conversations. And I just said, hey, here's what I don't know how the conversations you've had prior, but I wouldn't throw them right into the deep end initially. Not at 17 years old. I would introduce them to concepts. And I think for parents, we can do this all through our child rearing ages. So when kids are little, like my kids, you introduce them to give, save, spend. And then you introduce them to a savings and checking account. And then you introduce them to a Roth IRA. And then what you begin to do is you slowly begin to spoon feed them with information as their financial maturity is ready for it. I don't know that I would start the conversation, Calvin, and say, hey, son, daughter, just so you know, $250,000 waiting for you when you're 21. Right, like that might paint the wrong picture. What I want to teach them is, hey, here's how compound interest works. Here is what $1 can turn into $88 means. Here's what the wealth multiplier looks like. I would begin having those conversations. And when you see that little seed in their mind start to really grab hold and take shape, then you can start talking about real things. Like, hey, I want to talk to you about your college. Your mom and I, we decided we're going to start saving in a 529, and this is what we've been doing so that we can pay for that. And we decided we wanted to start an UPMA, and this is the behavior that we've been doing. Before you ever talk about numbers, because Brian, I'm going to give you credit for something you taught me. You have this concept called go-kart math.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times people do. Well, first of all, why don't you tell us what go-kart math is?
I haven't talked about go-kart math in years,
Oh, it
which is
sticks
sad
with
because
me,
I
bro.
used to talk about it in content all the When I was a kid, I knew my parents made like $40,000 a year, and I knew the go-kart I wanted cost $500. And I remember when I didn't get the go-kart for Christmas, I remember thinking, man, my parents just don't love me because they make enough that they could buy me 80 go-karts. And I realized as I've gotten older, as a kid, you do what's called go-kart math, is that you're taking very simple assumptions and then expanding on it, whereas that's not the way when you get to adult life. There's a lot of things pulling at your back pocket on that, but forever it's been coined go-kart math.
So what I would do, like when you tell a kid, hey, you're gonna have $250,000 at 21, go-kart math is really, really easy.
Yeah.
When you start talking about compound interest and you just talk about $1 earning 10 cents and that $1.10 earning 10% and so on and so forth, then the concept sets in. So if you have not had any conversations yet, Calvin, I would start having those conversations. And as a parent, you'll probably recognize when your child is mature enough to understand the numbers. And that's exactly what you have modeled with your oldest daughter, I believe.
Yeah, and that's why even the estate documents reflect that stuff. I mean, you don't want if something tragically happens to you while your children are in their 20s, they might not be at the point where they process it the same way as if they came into this 7-figure and beyond sum is in their late 30s or even 40s. Yeah. So that's why you have to have these conversations to make sure you're creating financial mutants who understand how to use money as a tool, because unfortunately when you're young it can get all twisted and weird things can happen, and you don't want to squander that opportunity.
Yep.
Awesome. Calvin, thank you for the question. Really good question, and we're really glad you're here today. We're going to move on to Hampton's question next. He says, hey guys, I'm 28 and I currently have about $18,000 in my 401k and was contributing 15%.
Love it.
But I constantly feel like we don't have enough cash. I dropped my 401k contributions down to the match to pay off consumer debt and build up more cash, and now I have remorse that I'm missing the golden years of investing. Is that the right move? And P.S., we are also raising a 7-month-old, so squarely in the messy middle. So what advice or what words of encouragement do you have for Hampton?
Well, here's what we found in our experience. A lot of times people start on our financial journey and we don't know what to do, so we just do something. Like, and I'm gonna, Hampton, I don't know if this is your case, but say, hey, I've heard I need to save. I'm going to go start doing 15% in my 401k. And that's awesome. We love that you did that. But what that means is you probably jumped into the story somewhere in the middle and you didn't start the story at the beginning. And what we said is, man, what if we could provide a tool? What if we could provide something for folks where they know exactly where they should start and how they should progress? How valuable might that be?
If this thing could only play like a tune, you know.
I think you're doing it.
But
I think you're doing
the financial order of operations, because what Hampton really laid out is that do an employer match. He's got that, but he also let it loose that he's saving 15%. But then he said he had some higher consumer debt. I don't know if that's credit cards or what it is. But this is why we have structured the financial order of operations, so you'll actually know what to do with your next dollar. And look, and here's the other part, Hampton, just to give you the rest of the story on this is, I think a lot of people think that these steps through FOO is going to go step 1, 2, all the way through step 9, and it's not going to change. That is not right. You're going to have all kind of things that happen in life, like you having a 7-month-old, where all of a sudden your priorities and other financial goals will change. So it's not uncommon that you might get to like step 6, and then you have to go back to step 4 because you used a lot of your emergency reserves for that first house down payment and so forth. Or maybe you get laid off somewhere, or you have a job change because you just want to move to a different place and go into a different industry. You never know where you're going. So that's why the financial order of operations really is your kind of instruction manual on knowing what to do with your next dollar. So the question I would have for you, you say you have high interest consumer debt, but yet you're doing 15%, and you feel like you're still leaving something on the table. I'm going to challenge you to go look at what you're paying on those credit cards or the consumer debt, and if you're paying 20% or greater, you need to knock that out after you get your employer match, so then you can have even more dollars to attack, maybe even beyond that 15%. After you fill up your emergency reserves, you can start hitting the Roth, the HSAs, as well as that maxing out those 401ks. It's all here for you. It's also, if you really want to get a jump start, I have a book, Millionaire Mission, that will lighten this load and also give you the origin story of how all these steps of FOO came about too.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The language you used, I think you said, is I feel cash strapped. One of the beautiful things about the financial order of operations, if you do knock out step 3, get rid of that high interest debt, and if you then do have an appropriate emergency fund, it's going to prevent you from feeling that tension, from feeling that anxiety of, oh man, I don't have enough cash. Because you know you've got your cash chiseled off, and then you can put your dollars to work. And at 28 years old, your money is still so powerful. So if it takes you 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, even a year to get all the way back up to step 6, to where then you are probably putting 15% into your 401k, that's okay, because you are still young and you have time, and your future self will thank you when those unknowns happen and that emergency fund has to be tapped into.
I don't want Hampton to leave, though, without some positive. Hampton, I want you to go to moneyguy.com/resources, play with our wealth multiplier tool on there, and you're going to see at age 28, and you already have an $18,000 saved up. Lots of opportunity. And that's why it's also going to let you reprogram your mind on how all those dollars that are going towards that consumer debt and the interest maybe needs to be coming and thought of differently.
Fantastic. Hampton, thank you for that question. Thanks for being here. We love answering your questions. So we're going to move right on to another question from Chaotic Enigma.
Oh, wow.
Fancy username. Chaotic Enigma says, as a single person without any kids, do single people need to plan personal finances any differently than a dual income married couple? Save more for healthcare and retirement? Other considerations? What do you think?
Well, you know what? It's interesting. I'm going to say no, but let me tell you why I'm going to say no. I don't think that single people need to plan differently, because all planning is really a function of what are your goals? What are the things that you want money to? What are the things you want money to allow you to do? Is it to travel? Is it to have a family? Is it to be financially independent? Is it to not work? Is it to, you fill in those blanks. Well, what's really, really interesting is the goals of a single individual with no kids might look different than the goals from a married individual who has kids, right? Like what they want to do at different stages and stations of life might change. So I'm going to argue that the behaviors and the patterns are not necessarily different. What's different is the finish line that you're working towards. Maybe as a single person, you say, hey, I only want to work until I'm 50 years old. I really want to do this FIRE thing, and then I want to travel around. Well, that might look different than someone who says, hey, I really want to work until my kids get out of college. I want to make sure I pay for that, and I want to make sure that I have all of these things lined up. You might have different goals and priorities, and it's ultimately your goals and priorities that should inform the decisions you're making around savings and how you're attacking that.
I like how you laid that out, because a lot of the things I was writing down were kind of retirement type things, but I do think it's also going to impact like life insurance and estate planning. It's going to probably be more simplistic in some ways. So maybe you have less expenses on that, even in the building years. It really depends on where you are in the journey. If you're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, it's going to look different from somebody who's in their 50s and 60s with this question. So, but I will tell you what I liked what Bo was talking about is that your result might be different, especially like long-term care insurance. If I was somebody who was single and you don't have kids and you don't have a spouse, you might want to think more. Long-term care is more of a peace of mind thing that I tell people to consider when they look at getting their 50s.
Yep.
And in that one, you kind of will be in the driver's seat, especially if you're worried you won't have somebody to speak on your behalf. You can go ahead and make some of those decisions yourself to make sure you make those decisions while you're able-bodied and so forth. Legacy probably looks a little different if because a lot of times when we have prospects and clients come on board, they have these goals to leave this amount of money to the children. Or not to leave more than this amount to the children, you're not going to have that. So you'll need to be thinking about, because you're probably still going to be tremendously successful, and you've got to start thinking about what is this money's why? What's the purpose? What are you going to do with this? Make sure you're just putting in that effort to understand how those decisions are impacted and what your savings rate and your goals. It's back to Bo's point. I think he laid it out beautifully. Your priorities and your goals are going to shape what these things look like in the long term.
Yeah, I'm just thinking through, like logistically, like maybe for a single person, it's 6 months of expenses versus 3 months of expenses for an emergency fund. Maybe for a single person who if you don't know that you're where you want to be for the next 5-7 years and you don't have like the job, maybe home ownership is not like an interim term goal where someone who's trying to like start a family and establish roots, it is an interim term goal. So those kinds of things may look different, but what's beautiful is the FOO is still for you. Yeah. The FOO will still guide you, because no matter what your goals are, the financial order of operations is going to allow you to work towards those goals in the most efficient and effective manner possible.
Awesome. Chaotic Enigma, thanks for being here. I hope that helps, and thanks for asking your question today.
And hopefully we restored order to your financial chaos.
There
Absolutely. The chaotic enigma, yeah.
You know what I wish everyone would do right now? I just would love if you guys would subscribe to the channel that we know you're out there. People keep telling us, hey guys, you really ought to tell people to subscribe. So here's us asking you, if you want to do us a solid,
that would be awesome.
Please subscribe to the channel so then you can know anytime we put new content out there. And if you've not gone out to the website, moneyguy.com, and sign up for our newsletter and get all the stuff that we send every weekend, you should do that because it's pretty stinking ballin'. Yeah. Is that a fair assessment?
That was a great assessment. I loved it.
I always feel like I stress Megan out when I brag about how good that newsletter is.
What's funny is I feel like she's picking up her game. Now there's so much like every week I'm like, it's getting a little bit better. It's getting a little bit better. It's pretty good. Yeah. It's pretty
no
good.
Pressure.
Poor
no
Megan.
Pressure.
She's doing a great job though. All right. We're going to move on to Ankur's question. It says, when starting the 401k journey, Roth 401k was not a thing. Now I find myself in my 40s with no Roth dollars, healthy 401k dollars, and I'm in a higher tax bracket now. Should I prioritize regular 401k or Roth 401k?
All right, so Ankur, we don't know enough about all of your different financial variables to be able to give you like specific advice around this. But here's what we say generally. If you are in a lower tax situation, we define lower taxes if you add up your marginal federal rate and you add up your state marginal rate and it's below 25%, there's a really good chance that Roth makes sense for you. Now, if you're in a higher tax situation, meaning you add your marginal federal and your marginal state and it's above 30%, you're in a higher tax situation. And we would argue that every dollar you put on the pre-tax side of your 401k can be super, super valuable. I mean, you can think about it. $1 goes in, saves me 30 cents in taxes. That's kind of like a 30% imputed rate of return today. So it's really, really hard to walk away from that current year tax benefit. But we see this all the time, Brian. People get later on in their careers, later on in life, and they've not yet begun building Roth dollars. One, do high income folks have an option to build Roth? And two, does it mean that he has to start building Roth dollars right now today?
Well, Anchor, I want to make you feel better about something. There's a trend that's been going on with tax laws that have been set up coming out of Washington, D.C. is that we have this timer in the background for all of our retirement savings, especially the traditional ones that you've been funding because you're in a higher tax bracket, where you knew at 70 and a half, you were going to have to start making required minimum distributions.
Up now to like 73, 75.
Now it's 75 years of age likely for you. So there's an additional 5 years. And why does that matter? Because a lot of people, I think, have the same regret or fear that they didn't get to save Roth dollars because that was a concept that kind of started around 98 in the IRAs, and then it turned into Roth 401ks. But you would miss that opportunity because of your tax rate. You're going to have an opportunity, especially if you retire anytime before 75. Once your earned income falls off, your taxable income likely is going to drop as well. And that's going to drive you into a much lower marginal tax rate. And it's not uncommon, and we do this for a lot of our clients. We do a lot of Roth conversion planning from whenever they retire to required minimum distribution age. You use those years and you do a tax projection every year, right around October, November of every year, where you figure out, hey, what's my income and my tax obligation going to be for the year? And which tax rate, marginal rate am I going to be in? And if it's in a low enough marginal tax rate, how much can I convert of those traditional retirement dollars, those tax-deferred accounts, and still maximize that lower tax rate? It's a great planning opportunity, so don't feel stressed out just because you don't have a lot of Roth. Now, I will tell you, as you get older and you're getting to a point where you say, yes, I don't have the wealth multiplier. If you go to moneyguy.com/resources, you can see what your wealth multiplier by age is. A lot of times as you get 50s and beyond, you realize your wealth multiplier is not as high, but maybe from a legacy standpoint, if you have children and other things, because Roth accounts are, you still have to pay them out for 10 years unless you have a special needs child or somebody, there's some unique, language in there for spouses and other things, but it's still 10 years of tax-free growth potentially. So think about it from a legacy perspective as well, but there's some great opportunities. You haven't missed the boat. It's just there's yet more to come.
Can I throw out one other planning opportunity that I would encourage you to think about? For a lot of high-income individuals who make too much money to be able to contribute directly to Roth IRAs, there is a strategy where you could potentially do backdoor Roth IRA contributions, or we call it Roth conversion strategy, where if your account structure's right, meaning you don't have any other IRA rollovers or SEP IRAs or simple IRAs, you just have Roth assets and then qualified assets like 401k, 403b, there's nothing that says that you couldn't do a non-deductible traditional IRA contribution and then convert those dollars to Roth, and that's a tax-free conversion if you did not take the deduction on the front end. If you want to know more about that, we talk tons about backdoor Roths at moneyguy.com. You can go search any of the shows we've done on that. But for higher income folks, I would love a scenario where you're maxing out your 401k on the pre-tax side, getting all of that tax savings this year, and then still doing backdoor. So that way it's not either or, it's a both and you're building up both of those buckets.
And then there's even an additional option with the mega backdoor.
Oh,
Roth.
yeah, that's a great one.
If you're structured in the right retirement plan, you have a high enough, if you're especially W-2, high income W-2, there's opportunities for that too. And we've done content, to go research on that as well.
Those are some great thoughts. That's awesome. All right, we're going to keep moving with the financial questions, so keep putting them in the chat. But for right now, we're going to go to Stephanie's question. She said, why do you recommend Roth IRA before Roth 401k? I've got the same low-fee index funds and trying to understand the benefit of having another account to keep track of.
Oh, this is a great question, though. And the fact, but look, let me she just answered something. She gave us enough that I can give a little detail on this. We don't like to talk about this because it could work against you. But it is something you should know that makes Roth IRAs better than Roth 401ks. For most people, let me go through what other people, and then I'll tell you, Stephanie, why you're kind of special. Most people, the thing we like about Roth IRAs, you get to choose where you put the Roth IRA. Because a lot of times your employer maybe is the golf buddy, or a relative of the owner of the company, and maybe it's not the best plan. Plans have gotten a lot better, by the way. This used to be a much bigger delta of how bad the difference between good plans and bad plans, but still, what I liked with Roth IRAs, you could go choose a low-cost provider, the Vanguards, the Fidelities, the Schwabs of the world, whereas your employer, you didn't always have that option. But you just shared your employer is using a very low cost. So you probably, one of those three I just said, you probably have that as your 401k, and you're like, why should I just do the Roth 401k? We love the Roth 401k. We're not throwing dirt at it, but that Roth IRA is going to have a break glass in an emergency. You could actually pull the cash out penalty-free, tax-free, and that isn't a, we don't love it, we don't like it, but there are times in life, if you had a medical emergency or something, that 4 and 5 can kind of meld together a little bit. That's kind of a great planning opportunity, that you're an escape hatch that you wouldn't have necessarily with the 401k.
Yeah, so I think the ability to tap into your basis in a Roth versus a 401k is one plus for the IRA over the 401k. Here's the other one. Even if you have a really great 401k and it's super low cost, there is probably some other expense that's being borne in that 401k, whether it be third-party administrator expenses, whether it be record-keeping expenses, or whether it be expenses from an investment advisor who serves the plan. None of those things are bad. It's just 401ks have costs associated with them. There's a really good chance that your 401k has some of those costs, where if you go to the Roth IRA, all you're going to pay, especially with the low-cost provider you said, is just the internal operating expense of whatever fund you buy. So if you go buy like the lowest cost S&P 500 index fund, you're paying 0.015% on that, and that's it. There are no other fees. There are no other charges. So there's a chance the Roth IRA might be a little bit less expensive than the Roth 401k, but this is not a hill that we're going to die on, because we love both of them.
Well, it's also not an either or. It's an and.
Boom.
Is because
Boom.
what I love is that the cool thing is you load up that Roth IRA, you still got excess. You get to step 6 of the financial order of operations. You can load up the Roth 401k too. I mean, that's why it's a really cool, it's not either or, it's and. But we gave you why, there is an order of operations, just like math has an order of operation with PEMDAS. There's an order of operation with money, and we kind of laid out some of those differences between those two different account structures.
Love it.
That's awesome. Stephanie, thanks for the question. If you are interested in getting a copy of those 9 steps, that order of operations, don't forget to go to moneyguy.com/resources. We have it up there for free, along with tons of other resources. So be sure to take advantage of that if anything there sparked your interest.
Ruby, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
You excited about this book tour?
Absolutely.
I'm so excited.
It's going to be
about
fun.
It. So
I mean, we don't always get to see people face to face, right? Like, that's going to be so fun to be live and in person and doing a show together. Like, that's awesome.
It's so dumb because I think the chats are so fun, right? Like, I love that we can cause now Brian doesn't get to see it because I got the computer, but it's fun.
You're worried about my
Squirrel.
attention deficit disorder, where I would not be able to see anything but the chat.
But we're gonna be in a room just hanging out with our people. It's gonna be awesome. We're doing 4 cities. If you haven't heard, we're gonna do Franklin, Tennessee. We're gonna do Dallas, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, and Washington, D.C. And it's gonna be awesome. We're gonna be hanging out with you guys. We're gonna do some fun stuff. I saw the team. I don't know what's going on. Working on goodies that maybe.
Oh yeah. No,
going
there's
on.
actually 2 goodies I have to tell people about. Can I tell them now?
Yeah.
Well, they're not just showing up. For
Man,
the
I
goodies.
thought
We're
I was the
telling
one that can't keep secrets.
are
So
we
yeah.
telling
No, people need to know about
Okay.
this.
Let's load them up.
No, well, hold up your foo. Let's do a foo sighting.
Hey!
Listen, this is the perfect place to tell people about this because you guys are so fun. You've made foo sighting a thing because Brian holds up his laminated copy. So there may or may not be a foo sighting in the show. So we thought, well, maybe we should have some laminated copies for people just as a fun, we get to experience the foo sighting together in person. And so the first 50 people to show up get their copies. So that's
Some
just for any
foos for
kind
use.
of general admission ticket. Just show up. We got a lot of fun little things like that planned just since we're all going to be together. And then, Brian's telling me he really wants to sign some books after the show too.
Oh, is that right?
So
He's got a
we're
lot of
going to try to
I'm
make that happen.
really good at signing books because I signed over 4,000
Is that
of
right?
those signature
Yes.
cards. I mean, it was. By the way, if you're wondering, was it a stamp? Nope.
No.
And I didn't know. Before I got into this book writing thing, I was like, because you buy a Sharpie and a Sharpie seems like it lasts for
3.5
you know,
years.
a decade in my house. I mean, I think I probably still have Sharpies that were probably bought a decade ago. But I have gone through so many Sharpies that I realize now why Costco and Sam's sell 30 of them together.
one
It's because I
time.
literally would, in the middle of
for the book
signing, I would have
signers.
to change out, throw them into a pile. And by the time of a session, I'd probably have 4 or 5 Sharpies that I had worn out.
I love it.
In that session. So there's lots of opportunity. We're excited. I will tell you this thing. I'd like to say you're in my dreams, but maybe it's my nightmares too, because I've been waking up in the middle of the night thinking about this keynote speech and other things. It's going to be fun. So you can come and hopefully be motivated, entertained, and maybe just watch the chaos. Kind of like when you go to a NASCAR event, you're wondering how many car accidents there are going to be.
How many left turns are
Come
going be
to
in
the
this
live
thing?
Okay,
event, and
car
because
accidents.
you get to see it all.
You're a professional, Ryan.
That's right. You're a professional.
Trained professional. Well, just like car drivers are. You know, if you're a race car driver, you know, you're a trained professional too, but still the audience is there to probably see how many accidents they can see.
There are 2 things I'm hoping for. Either spontaneous song or spontaneous dance from you.
Ooh.
I don't know which one, but those are the 2 I'm hoping for.
Well,
'Cause
let
every
me,
now and
let
then
me
he
go
just
ahead and
hits a
warn
dance
you.
move
If you're
and-
coming to the Franklin show, no song will happen. This
Okay.
is, look, I was on the tennis team in high school, but when I got to the University of Georgia, I told no one I played tennis, because then you get around kids in college that come from these schools where they really
Like
played
legit
tennis,
tennis teams.
and you hear about guys how good they were and like rankings and stuff, and you're like, I'm never telling anybody I played tennis. Franklin, Tennessee, if you ever took piano lessons, you don't tell anybody in Franklin, Tennessee that you took piano lessons, because more than likely somebody sitting next to you does it for a living.
And has some famous song out there.
So
yeah.
that's why in that Franklin show, you never know who's going to be in the audience. And then what I've been working on, y'all didn't ask for this, but this is how I impose my will on everybody. I have a playlist that I'm trying to work up on the pre-show music. And my kids have been listening to it all weekend as I've been working through it. But I'm hoping that everybody in the audience gets to hear this playlist as well.
Oh, I love it.
Awesome. Well,
Poor
it's going to
Ruby.
be fun.
She's like, what am I doing?
Moneyguy.com/book tour in
This
case you
guy.
want to
This guy.
grab those tickets and come hang out with us live and in person. It's going to be fun.
Reby loves me as long as we survive this book tour together. I'm worried that
We're
you're like,
good.
oh my gosh, how am I, this guy, he's such a mess.
We're
No, it's
only
been a
days
lot, but
away.
it's been good.
Believe me, I'm
It's
very
days
aware that we're
away.
days
I know.
away. And my sleep is showing that as well. I'm like, why did we do this again?
Oh, that's interesting. Someone said share the playlist on Spotify. That might be a good idea after the book tour.
Oh,
Share
yeah.
it, make it public, like
That'd be
see if
fun.
that's a thing. Might be something. I don't know how to do that on Spotify. I didn't know you could do that, but that
It's
sounds
not
awesome.
that hard. We can do it.
Look at Megan, she knows stuff.
She knows stuff. What is that? Okay, we're gonna dive back into the questions. Somebody said like, "Oh, sometimes I miss the pre-show chat." I'm like, now you just get a
I'm about
lot
to
of
say,
mid-show
We
chat.
get mid-show chat here.
So okay. All right, we are gonna go on to Danny's question next. Are you ready to
Danny!
dive back into some personal finance?
Oh yeah, we're answering questions today. Got it.
All right. Danny says, I'm 25 and I make $60,000 a year. I'm on step 5 of the financial order of operations, but I'm already hitting the 25% investing,
Yeah.
which is awesome.
Yeah.
Where do I go next? Am I okay to stop here? Interesting question. Thoughts for Danny?
Yeah, so we have a lot of people that do this, right? They say, hey, based on my income, I did the math and I did my 25% calculation, and by the time that I get my employer match, step 2, and then I max out a Roth IRA, and maybe if I'm married, I max out a spouse Roth IRA, and maybe if I max out to an HSA, I do the HSA. I have exhausted all 25%, and you know what we say to that? That's awesome. Good. Good. Now the question is does that change? Because when I hear Danny ask that question, 25 years old, that is so young, with so much time, with so much opportunity ahead, I think that sounds great. Now, as Danny gets older, as he approaches 35 or 40 or 45, what are some things that he might need to be thinking that would potentially cause a shift in how he's doing
Well,
that?
let me give the technical answer, but then I want to get to what I think you're hitting on, is that Danny, technically as part of the financial order of operations, if you were reading the instruction manual itself, Millionaire Mission, that comes out next Tuesday, I lay out that you can actually graduate past step 6 by reaching the 25%, which you're at. Now, what Bo is, so you can move on to step 7, even step 8 with that 25% savings and investment rate. But what Bo is alluding to is you're at the early part of your journey, where at age 25, if you went to moneyguy.com/resources and looked at your wealth multiplier, it's going to be huge. So I always say, if that's the case, should you stop? Now, if you're living a miserly life, you're not actually enjoying life because all your money is going towards investing, definitely come off of that accelerator or gas pedal. But I would encourage you, go to learn.moneyguy.com. We actually have a Know Your Number course. And I just want to make sure, because maybe if you're part of the FIRE/FINE movement and you think you're going to lead the workforce and you're in the 50s, your goal's different than somebody who thinks they're going to work until 65. So you have to begin with the end in mind. And that's why I love the Know Your Number courses, because it's going to allow you to use the tool to put in when you want to retire, put in what your savings rate impacts, what does inflation impact, what is your rate of return impact, and pull all those levers so you can find out if you're ahead of the curve, if you're behind the curve, or right where you need to be. And that's going to be really the determining factor, is if you stay right in that sweet spot of 25%, or if you need to kind of put a little more pressure on yourself because you're leaving the workforce early, or you have some other personal goal that's going to put more of that obligation or more of the planning on you to save and invest even more.
Man, 25 years old, saving 25%.
That's great.
That's awesome.
That is so awesome. That is so inspiring, because as we even covered on setting up this show, just so little goes so far. On just because the power of your wealth multiplier. And that's why anybody who's watching this, if you're young and you want to get motivated, go to moneyguy.com/resources and play around with that wealth multiplier tool we have there, because it will blow your mind on what your money can become.
Love to see it. Danny, thank you for the question. Thanks for being here. I hope that was helpful and gives you some food for thought. And we're going to keep on going with these questions. Brett has a question for you guys.
Did you say Brett or Brett?
Brett. He said, can you use your emergency fund to pay off your car if you would still have 3 months left? This is a bigger question to me of, how much should you have in your emergency fund and what is it for? Can you talk to that?
There's some more variables too.
Yeah.
What's the interest rate on
yes,
those
exactly.
car?
What kind of
loan?
debt needs to be knocked out? Yeah.
In the financial order of operations, and then when I go into the detail of the origin and how to use it, even in Millionaire Mission, there's a chance, especially with car loans now, that they could be classified as high interest debt, which is a step 3 of the financial order of operations, whereas at 3 to 6 months is step 4. So there's definitely some overlay on that. And Bo, I'll let you kind of answer the question, but I was surprised to find out, and this is probably about a month and a half, 2 months ago, that there was someone talking to me that had a car loan that was 15%. I didn't even know that happened. That is insane. For sure step 3 with where interest rates are right now. So I just wanted to lay it up on that initial thought. Well, what else should Brett consider?
Yeah, Brett, whenever I think about utilizing my emergency fund, or when I try to tackle that idea, it really comes down to risk. I want to know, how much risk am I inserting into my financial situation? And so this is what I mean. Clearly, you've said it sounds like you're in a situation where 6 months is probably the desired emergency fund level. What I want to know is, if you go down to 3 months, and let's just play out the worst case scenario, you were to have a major expense, or you were to lose a job or have to go find a new job. How quickly could you find a new job? Is that something that could happen pretty quickly? How lean could you cut your lifestyle? Like inside of those living expenses, is there some fluff in there that you could cut back if you had to? Because what I don't want you to do is tap into the emergency fund to go pay off the car loan. And then something happens. I mean, any of the unknown unknowns, and you have to begin utilizing that emergency fund for what it's there for, and it begins to become exhausted very, very quickly. Now, if there's some flex in there, and you say, you know what, if the worst case, we can eat out, I can drop the eating out budget, and we can drop the fun budget, and we can do this sort of thing, and that would be okay. Then I love what Brian said. If you're in an arbitrage situation where your car loan is 15% and you've only got your cash earning 5%, that may be a very prudent use of those dollars, so long as you don't get too risky. Now, if your car loan is 3% and your cash is earning 5%, that one I get, and it still fits inside of 23.8. That one maybe not so much, but I think the ultimate question has to come back to risk.
Yeah.
How risky will using those dollars be for my overall financial situation? If it's acceptable, then I don't think it's a crazy idea to do that.
Yeah, that's one of those typical financial planner things is people ask us questions. We say, well, it depends.
It depends.
And if we know all the variables, we can give you, because we do the triage situation of take you with what you come in and get you the answer. But sometimes it's hard not knowing all the variables.
Yep.
Fantastic. All right, Brett, thank you for your question. And just thanks for being here in the chat with us today. We love answering the personal finance questions. The next one is from Winnie DeFoo.
Oh, man.
I hope you
Look
enjoyed
at
that.
That's the
That's a
first
good
time
one.
I think I've heard that.
That's a
That is
good one.
awesome.
Thought you would appreciate that. It says, planning to retire early, starting in about 10 years. We want to pay off our home before early retirement. Would it be smarter to pour all our money into investments and pay off the home at the end? Or something else?
Did Winnie DeFoo give their age?
Did not. But Winnie DeFoo, if you're out there, if you'd like to give us your age to give us some more
let
context,
me-
that'd be great.
Or
No, I'm going to let you say, because I know what you're going to say. But let me
Let's
give the
go.
conservative. Let me give the conservative answer, and then you can give the maximizer
I'm just
answer.
saying, age is one of two variables we need to know.
It's Bo picks on me because I do think Winnie DeFoo. I love that name. That's why I keep saying it. But it's I think it is the right thing to try to be debt free before you walk through that threshold of financial independence, because there's already going to be some strange psychological things that happen the first time you leave your job. Stock market gets its teeth kicked in. You're going to be like, whoa, it's not one of those things, because we all cope in our own way. But for most people who are working, when the stock market gets beaten up, they're like, man, I guess I'll just, keep my head down. I'll keep working hard. It hits a little differently once you're actually living off those assets and you see them go down 20% or even more. So that's the first thing. So I like you being debt free, because it really, it kind of takes that pain out of that volatility to a lot of ways. But I've said, and when I did Millionaire Mission, and when I've talked about this on the show about the financial order of operations, I do think there's a difference between people under age 45, because you get wealthy behaviors, versus people who are greater than 45 as stay wealthy behaviors, because we all know the typical millionaire crosses that threshold around 49 years of age, or saving and investing for 27 to 28 years. So it's right in that time. Plus, when you overlay that with the wealth multiplier, if you go to moneyguy.com/resource to see what every dollar has the potential to become for you, you see that there is that balance between what money can do while you're young versus when you get older. It's just not as much of a trade-off. Now, what Bo is going to allude to, and this is something we've talked about, because I had my own arbitrage situation. 2.5% mortgage, and my cash is making 5%. Bo's like, you should never pay that loan off. And here I am sending extra money. So we argue about this. And I will tell you, it's even gotten worse, is because we own some commercial real estate together. And I've told Bo, in 10 years, I want to have this loan paid off. And and I even negotiated with the bank to let us give them extra money every year so I can make that goal happen. But Bo, what's the rest of the story on what a maximizer does?
What we recognize is that if you have a mortgage that's super, super low interest, let's say that it's a 2.5%, 3.5% mortgage, it's very easy to go deploy your dollars elsewhere to earn more than that. Like every dollar you apply to that mortgage saves you that interest rate and interest. However, if I could go deploy that dollar and go earn 7%, 8%, 10% per year, there's a good chance that even if I wanted to be debt-free in 10 years, even if I wanted to write a check to pay for the mortgage, it would be a more optimal solution, a more efficient way to get there by investing those dollars to grow. And then once the account hits the size of the remaining mortgage, then pay it off. The one variable, DeFoo, we don't know is what's your mortgage interest rate, because my advice changes based on that. 2.5%, 3%, I think it's really, really hard to justify not building up, like investing the dollars, letting the pot of money grow up, then having a check to write. If you are someone who bought the house recently or refinanced recently for some reason, and you are at like a 6.5%, 7.5%, well, now the mathematics becomes a lot more difficult. But for someone sitting in like a super, super low interest mortgage, if your goal is to be debt free, I would argue that the most effective and efficient way to get to debt free would be to deploy those dollars elsewhere and then pay off the mortgage instead of paying it off through time. And fortunately, I have a business partner that loves math too and recognizes that's what makes sense on the commercial property.
Bo has convinced me the ability to be debt-free is just as good. Now, I do think it's a little different on the commercial, but I think for your primary mortgage, especially going through the threshold of being in the financial independence, meaning you're living off of your assets, it comes down to risk too. So don't discount that too much, because we all know the saying, and I've said it many times, is pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. There is a threshold where you might be taking on too much risk, and it's not all about the mathematics. There's also emotions, and you have to know thyself to figure out what's the right decision for you.
Love it. Hey, we agree on that one.
Okay. But it is one of those things. I mean, I struggle with it because I am good at math, but I also know that there's some things outside of mathematics that come into this. The mindset matters as well. Sure. And you have to, and by the way, that's why I love the Stay Wealthy, is because at this point we are splitting hairs.
That's it.
It's not like you've foregone building your wealth and building your independence. You're not jeopardizing the journey with these decisions. This is just the nerdy discussions that people who are good with money have with each other.
Yeah, that's quite a great problem to have. So Winnie DeFoo, thank you for being here. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the great username. We all got a kick out of it. Want to do one more?
Sure.
Got nothing but time.
All right.
That is not true, actually.
So generous of you, Bo. Okay.
His tongue was firmly planted on his cheek as he said that.
Jordan's question says, what do you think about dividend investing? What is the benefits of doing dividend investing versus regular index funds, assuming I'm still maxing out my 401k and Roth IRA?
All right, I'm going to give you, may I start this one?
Yeah, sure. You're the CFA.
What do we think about dividend investing? We love it. Why do we love dividend investing? Because we understand that investing has two components to it. There's an income component, there's a capital appreciation component. When I hear dividend investing, to me that just says, hey, that's half of the equation. That's actually less than half, but there's a part of the equation there. There's nothing wrong with that. What I have issue with is when someone becomes so focused on dividend investing, they become so focused on only the income component of the things that they're buying, they end up missing out on a lot of opportunity. What we really care about, and the way that we like to approach investing, is we care about total return. We want income coming into our investments. We want to have dividend yields. We want to have healthy metrics there, but we also recognize that capital appreciation can be so valuable. If I buy something for $10 today and it gives me $1 every year, that's great. But if I can buy something for $10 today and it gives me $1 every year and next year it's worth $12, well, now I've gotten both. I've gotten capital appreciation and dividends. So what I love about buying like index funds, if you go look at the S&P 500 index, there's some component of dividend yield there. Now, it's not going to be the same as if you're looking at specifically a dividend type mutual fund or something that focuses on those companies, but there is going to be a dividend yield. There is going to be an income component. I don't want people to get so caught up that they only focus on that one thing, because what likely ends up happening is the types of investments that often pay the highest yields or the highest current year income tend to be more conservative. So if you are a dividend investor, there's a really good chance you're going to have a pretty conservative portfolio, whether you're talking about the fixed income risk off, risk reduced side, or the equity risk on side. So I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both and you should focus on total return.
Yeah, I think I know when we did some content on this once, people kind of were, mean's not the right word, but there were a lot of people, because they'll come out of the woodwork because this dividend investing, and I get it. I mean, I think it's no different, and go with me on this because this is probably the part that's going to get me in trouble. Debt crusaders, you know, they pay off a credit card where they're paying, 20% interest rate, and they get so excited because, yes, that was detrimental. It was really hurting their financial future. And they get so excited that they then become debt crusaders and they start paying off a 3% mortgage because they just want to be debt-free of everything. It felt so good to be debt-free on the credit cards. Why not be debt-free on everything? And they just run with it. Well, the same thing I think can happen with dividend investing, because what I see people posting all the time on social media is they're like, man, I just got paid $500 in dividends. I'm going to do this in the next 5 years. I'm going to be up to $5,000 of dividends, and, and then to keep posting. Before long, I'm just going to replace 100% of my income. And they become so focused on that income component, exactly like you said, and not missing out on the capital appreciation and the other part, that it becomes the central part of their investment plan, hence the name dividend investing. I tell you that this is a component of the solution. We love dividend investing, but it is not the solution. And that's why I'm a big fan. And y'all have heard me talk about this, and this also gets people riled up, is that if you go research law of accelerating returns, the level of innovation and all the things that are happening, as long as we don't create the robots that kill us, humankind continues to want to evolve and become better, faster, stronger. And we have this beautiful thing in this modern world we live in. We get to actually invest in that. Just buy the index fund. Instead of trying to beat the market, you are the market. And that is such a powerful, powerful thing that you can do it for practically free. It's very tax efficient. And I just love how simple that component is, that I just don't want you to get sidetracked by dividend investing because it's so cool to say, hey, I just replaced 3 months worth of my income because I bought this dividend investing, because some people will start buying things that are either too conservative, maybe too aggressive, because there are games that companies play with their dividend strategies. I just want you to be aware of what the why is. What are the components of how you're using your portfolio so you don't get sidetracked? But we love dividend investing, but it's part of the solution, and it's not the solution. So be careful as you're analyzing that.
Great.
Fantastic. Guys, as always, thank you so much for being here. We love answering your questions. We love hanging out with you in the chat. We'll be back here every Tuesday, 10 a.m. Central, and we'll be live and in person in 4 cities starting next week. That's crazy. So if you want to join us next Tuesday, great. If you want to join us in person, go to moneyguy.com/book tour. And of course, also next week is the big launch of Millionaire Mission. We have to keep saying it because it's just such a big, exciting thing that we've been working towards and that you guys have been so supportive of. So if you haven't gotten your pre-order in yet, go to moneyguy.com/millionaire mission. All the details are there about where you can buy it, what pre-order perks you can still get in on that end on May 28th. So yeah, definitely check that out. We're very excited, and we're just super grateful for y'all hyping us up and being excited with us. It means the world.
Yeah, this journey on writing this book is, I can't believe that it's not the finish line, by the way. This is just the launch point, the start point. But I sent out a personal email to everybody who's on our email list. I sent that out. I think it went out yesterday. I really did. That was something I put together. And the fact that I think even though it's not the finish line, we have the opportunity to make an impact. I didn't realize when I started writing this book that launch is a very important thing, because they're trying to guesstimate how many books do we need to print of this series. What is this? I don't have a big corporation behind us. It's pushing us. So you guys are the engines for this. And I would just love to make a splash, essentially a bestseller strategy, to see whose map we can get on to really expand the army of dollars, the financial mutant, everything we've tried to create so people could just be better with money. I really do think it's a noble cause. And I would encourage you guys, if you haven't, because this is crunch time, no more procrastination, I'd love for you to go to moneyguy.com/millionaire mission. Get in there, help us out. We can change the world, but I need you to pay it forward and actually buy the book. There is a better way to do money, and we've laid it out here in Millionaire Mission. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Bo Hanson, rest of the Money Guy team. Money Guy out.